So there's something interesting, I always like to look back on moments and see, how do we get here? What are those connections and things like that? And I think with you, it was something very similar. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I think it was 2 years ago, a mutual friend of ours, we were talking about like films or something, and she's like, "Oh, actually, there's an actress that lives in my building," and she was sharing your profile and things like that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But, obviously nothing came out of it because there was no project at that moment. And then I remember it was like a casting and you came to where I used to live before. And I believe you said it was like where you live or where you moved into, like when you first came to Barcelona.
Yeah, yeah, it was so crazy because obviously, I was a little nervous, like coming in person, and especially nowadays where you always do self tapes, like to do an in person callback. I was like, whew, it's been a while. And then I look at the building and I'm like, what? Like, out of all Barcelona buildings, which is a lot, like, this was the first Airbnb I ever stayed in, you know? And I came in and actually it was even the same portero, but it was a beautiful coincidence, I must say, to have that. Yeah.
But I think it's the universe also connecting. So, it's a good thing and now you're here. I wanted to ask you, as we start to get to know each other and you're such a creative person and saying and you do all these artistic projects and then the acting. How was that? How did you get into that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked this because I really love knowing the why of things. So many times when I watch movies and I get really passionate about actors, I start reading about their whys. Like, why did they get into acting? How did it happen? And actually, I think there's quite often very similar common denominators, which is like the passion of storytelling. Since I was really young, my mom always told me stories, and I would like imagine them, like want to reenact them. Like the next day, I would want to like do like skits for the family and stuff. And when I was 2 years old, we actually moved to the US. So I'm originally from Italy, but we lived in US, Argentina, Colombia, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Belgium, England, Spain. Yeah, like quite a mix of places. And I was an only child most of my life growing up. And for me, movies and yeah, cartoons were kind of like my family because very often I was, the new girl at school, so I couldn't bond so much. And I just remember always loving like these things, and it was like it was like my safe haven. I remember Shirley Temple. I used to love Shirley Temple. She was like, I want to be her. Or like watching movies like The Little Rascals or all these, Darla, all these little things, Alfalfa, such beautiful memories. And then from then on, I just wanted to perform for my family, and then my family would invite their friends. And because we traveled so much, I would speak different languages and different accents. So I remember my mom would be like, Misa, 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 do the difference between the American and the English tea party, So I would like, be the American, like, oh my God, I love this, like, tea is so beautiful. And then like the British, like, oh, this is actually very specific sugar, like very known sugar. Like I would do these things at the age of, like 5. Yeah.
No, I mean it's interesting because I mean yeah, like that. It's experiences that have kind of taken or the foundations, right, of the things that lead to that. And it's funny you were just mentioning, you're performing your accents. Um, it's I don't know if you knew this, but you're known for your accents. I remember like talking to people and like, oh yeah, she like fucking does like so many. Were those obviously, you lived in so many places. Did that influence or did you do like formal training to work on those?
So at the beginning, it was more like a passion, like I would really almost enjoy it. Like I would meet someone who was French and spoke English and I'd try to imitate them. But then, of course, like when I started getting more important castings, I really needed to ace that accent, because when you watch a movie and you're from the country and you see someone do the accent and you're from the country and they do the accent not well, you're just like, come on, why didn't they pick a local actor, So I wanted to make sure that I respect the accent and I respect the language. And so, recently I had to do a Mexicana. And so I really studied with a Mexican person to train that accent. Or if I do English, I also had an RP trainer to be able to really perfect that British accent in the way that they wanted to.
It's very interesting and the idea of perfecting your craft. I think I like to I talk to that a lot because sometimes people ask me like, oh, like would from a director and screenwriter perspective, people asking like, oh, I have this draft, I have this and that, and you can share that with friends and family, but working with a professional at certain points, when it comes to screenwriting, at least, I mean, by drafts five, six, like you probably have something that's a little more like solid. And I always say, I had this conversation with someone the other day saying, like, get a script editor, get someone who's a little more professional to look at. I say like their job is to poke holes in your script, which I'm sure it's the same thing, with the which it's like, oh, this is not great, could be worked on. And I think that's so important, when you're writing 110 pages and you don't know what's, I wrote something in page 37, like you don't remember the details, it's very hard to you're so immersed in the story and the details, and there's so much happening that you need a voice from the outside to kind of like guide you. So I do think that's so important in all the aspects of especially this industry and this world. You know, it's it's a good recommendation. And it's good that, like you said, perfect
I
your
think
craft.
for sure, like there are people who have been doing this for a very long time and who specialize in something specific. And I think one of the I mean, I love the word community. I love the fact that we are in an industry where we can really learn off each other and co-create and collaborate with one another. Like there are people who love to look into different types of scripts and, as you said, like find the holes and give input. And it's always so nice to get something from a different perspective as well. And by the way, for all of you listening, this man over here is such an incredible writer. Alex, you are so talented. Like, I have read your work, and honestly, like, I'm very impressed. And I must say, I am quite curious because, as I mentioned earlier, like, I do a lot of, research into why actors became actors. But how does a writer, director, creator become all of this in your case?
Well, thank you for
Do it.
the compliments. I don't know. I kind of fell into it in a way. You know, Hearing your story about childhood, I think it was something similar for me, not in the acting sense. I don't know. I guess I was always like a very running off in my imagination. I actually would like this is kind of weird. I don't really like tell this people much, but like I would literally like be in a room like playing with my hands and just like things like blowing up and it's all in my head, but it's like kind of I was like moving pieces with my hands in the air. And again, you probably see it from the outside and you're like something's wrong with this kid. Um, but but it's funny enough, like I think that's there was always something about world building for me and creating characters or like these things. And funny enough, I never pursued it. I didn't go to film school. I didn't, when I grew up in Uruguay, and then when I was going to the States to go to school, I had to like figure out what was my major. And honestly, I never considered film. I always say like I never was that person. When you hear interviews like, oh, I watched all these movies when I was and it wasn't the case for me. I loved films and things like that, but I never dove in like that, and then ended up working in advertising. Like, I remember seeing a billboard. I was like, oh yeah, like that's creative. I can do that. And that's sort of where it led in my path. I was in advertising for 13 years, which was a chapter in my life that I think gave me a lot of tools to do a lot of things that I do now. But it was a process. Writing was something I never actually. I wrote about this in an article and saying like how people there. Yeah, you're a copywriter. I was an art director, and it was like everyone stays in their lane. You don't write copy. You don't write this, even though like it was different. And I think I just had to find my voice throughout that, and try and test things, and it's been like a long journey. But that's kind of how it ended, and I wrote a lot of shitty scripts before the one that you've read, um, and going back to that to the script editor thing. I had this wonderful script editor. Her name's Abby Long, and she was in Barcelona, and again, she was poking holes, and it was wonderful. But you need to like respect the process, and I think for me was that, kind of getting into that, and the writing, and drafts, and listening to people, and not listening to people. It's like sometimes you have to like kind of follow your gut and understand like the world you're building, the characters you're creating. And at the end of the day, everything is very much alive, until that script, that film is not like fully made. It's going to be changing, it's going to evolve, and you're going to have like different experiences. Um, with that, I think I changed a character, or I added a character into this film, and now she's like in another scene dancing, because like the actress like actually had a dancing reel, and I was like, oh shit, what if we, so you kind of like tie things, and you don't close yourself to new ideas, to new opportunities, and how they might change the process and the work
Mhm.
yourself in. So I think that's kind of
Totally.
how I ended up, and then the writing itself, and sometimes it's a it's a process. Like I will say, like I'm not a fan of writing. Um, every time we would have like, the changes, or the comments, and I was like, fuck, like I don't wanna, I don't wanna write
Yeah.
anymore. I got this is good enough. So just let it be. But it does make it better. It does make it better. Even now, I think we sort of like talked about this the other day. Like I'm doing a shot list of the film itself, and I'm changing the script a little bit, like based on how I'm imagining. And you see it get better. You see it get better. So it's something that, surround yourself, or have that in the back of your head.
That's so beautiful what you say. I really love also what you mentioned about to be open, because there's like that phrase, like, right, like life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, like you have this idea, and I think some people like stick to this idea of like, okay, this is what I want, and then if magical things happen along the way, they're like, no, 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 but that was my idea. But actually, it's so beautiful when you're open to receive, to co-create with somebody else, to like, realize that, oh wow, look at this actor, they can do also this, oh that would fit so well on that scene, like I really find it interesting. I was actually also recently, I don't know if it was a podcast or an interview, I get confused nowadays which platform, of the Joker, like a bit of behind the scenes, with, I believe it was the director Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix, and how they actually were really co-creating the character. You know, the director had one idea, and they sat down together, and they were like, actually, I can see him do this. Oh wow! And then yeah, and look at the laugh and how that goes, and it's so magical because then that really becomes real. It's not just one person telling the other what to do or what they imagine. It's like together, two humans, creating something that, and we see the result. Like it's magical. It's so authentic and fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, you have to create the space for that to happen, that magic to happen. The character to evolve, to build, to there's so many aspects, there's so many aspects that you don't see as an audience member, from, I think there's always like that typical, like what did the character eat for breakfast this morning, and things like that. And you don't see that in the
Yeah.
actual like story, but it does influence actions, and there's so much work behind it. There's so much like building. There's so much like why these intentions and these decisions, and what is that space, and yeah, it's the co-creation. So like, and leading to that, like how's the building, when you build a character, how's that process for you?
So it's actually one of my most exciting processes. Like even when I get a self-tape or a casting in a character, like I'm quite old school. I like take all technology away. I take a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and a pen or a pencil or whatever I have, and I just start like writing, and like talking about what you mentioned about breakfast, right? Like I literally go to the point of, okay, just before the scene happened, how was that day? Like what did they have for breakfast? Like what was the thought process? What kind of like life objectives do they have, and needs and obstacles and relationships, and but really like going back to the imagination and the storytelling, like this is a human, just like we are humans, when you're playing a character, this is a human with, all we see is just lines on a paper. But this is a real person with past and memories and life experience and, situations. And that then brings all of that, it brings it to this moment, like us two now. Everything that happened into our life has brought us now to this moment. And it's the same with the character. So I love to go to the past. I must say I'm more of a past person than like a future person. I know some people like do characters of like, oh, what would they want, or what is their like back, like they're forward. But I really love analyzing what brought them to this moment now, because we don't really know the future. We can know their innate need, like what is their innate need, what is their public persona, that yeah. But I really like, I get into the juice of all of it. I really enjoy it. And then sometimes I also like embody the characters. I just like go around my day, especially with accents. Like if I have to do an Italian accent, I will spend days just using my Italian accent wherever I go, even with friends. Sometimes my friends are like, Misa, can you just be you again? I'm like, I am me, but I am the Italian me. I am the Pugliese me. That's okay. It's still me.
Yeah,
It's still
so
me.
how's that go? Because you say like we're taking from real life experiences. There's even like I mean, there's characters that I built that are based off of someone or traits from someone. Does Misa and the characters do they mix? Like, do you like how's that? Do you ever take something from a character that you're like, I want to apply this to my life, and be the Misa version, or how is that balance of worlds?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is what I love the acting world so much. Like, yes, it's a difficult industry and, there's so many obstacles that come in the way, lots of competition, but you learn so much about yourself because I think, acting is just being yourself under imaginary circumstances. And there's this analogy, of like, okay, here you have the character and here you have you. And it's like, where do you then overlap? I feel like I'm doing like, where do you then overlap? And this part here is then what you concentrate on, So whenever I bring a character to life, I don't pretend to be someone else. I take inspiration from people. We went back to the imagination and the observing. I think a lot of creators are very observant. We see things differently when we go around. As you mentioned, also like the billboards, I don't know, you just notice things in a different way. And many times I found myself as well going back to some characters that I've played and using that, like almost like a different version, a higher self. I played Bianca in Ace a few years ago, and she's this like very powerful wife of this mafia lord, Lucky Luciano. And she has this confidence. And sometimes when I feel a bit weaker, Gina that I played in La Fortuna, who's like this like shy little intern girl. I'm like, no, no, let's bring Bianca in here. How would Bianca react to this? But it's still me. It's just the part of me that is Bianca.
How does that just thinking right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's something about the character, the branding of an actor, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're talking about like, I mean, it's a difficult industry. Like, how do you brand yourself as an actress? I mean, there's social media,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
this, we're doing like, things we're talking, but um, do you think there's a formula or things that you've been told, like, like what would you tell like a person that
Yeah.
wants to become
Yeah.
an actress, like how do they start with that branding itself?
It's interesting because you would have asked me this like 5 years ago and I would have given you a complete different answer. I've recently found myself going to castings and at the last stage being asked how many Instagram followers I have. In a few years, this wasn't the case. Um, but if I'm really honest and I'm going to be as transparent as possible, like I know that nowadays, social media presence is important and putting yourself out there, like these magical moments. Thank you, Alex, as well, like for this. But I really believe that everything in life happens for a reason. If you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, and you're authentically yourself. You know, there's a lot of courses nowadays that I've seen online of like, okay, what are your, tus puntos estrellas? Like, what are your keywords that make you stand out, right? Um, and there's all these different techniques, but I think once you're you and you know who you are, and you're passionate about what you do, and you put the energy in, like you go to festivals, you research about different directors, you also watch films, you're up to date with the industry, you're up to date with the changes of the industry. You also post online the work that you do, things that you're passionate about, things that you've been wondering about, maybe some things that are on your mind. Just be yourself authentically on social media, and I think that will show. Because the moment that you start thinking, I think as a young actor, like, oh my God, no, the pressure, I should do this and this and this and this. You shouldn't do something because someone tells you. You should do something because you want to, you know? I think that's the only advice that I can give, because I just found myself that the more I put energy into what I loved, that just grew, and magical opportunities came, like meeting you. So thank you, neighbor. Thank you. So
No, I
yeah.
mean it's true. It's true about being authentic and in a world where it's not very authentic, or we're trying to put these masks on and things like that. And you're right, and sometimes, I mean, this is not a formula. This is a very subjective medium. Sometimes, you go there and you go to casting, maybe you're like, oh, your authentic self, and you don't get the role, but maybe you're not right for the role. Like, not everyone, I think just because you can change and pretend and act to be that character doesn't mean you're right for the character. And it could be for like the stupidest reason, but as a director, you're looking for things, or you're looking for other things, or you're looking for surprises, or you get surprised. I mean, there's so many things to that. So it's very interesting that, you say that, like, stay.
What do you look for as a director? Sorry to interrupt you, but now that you mention this, I want to touch that, because I think a lot of actors sometimes like are curious about this. Like when you have a brief of what you're looking for, are you quite specific, or can you be a bit more open? Like what do you look for when you look at actor self tapes, for example?
For me, I actually had a discussion with this with someone where I'm the kind of person that I would say I like to leave things open-ended, in the sense that, the casting profiles that I would create were detailed. They had the elements to understand the character, but I wasn't getting so specific into each little thing. And they were like, no, but the actors need to know what. And I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, because I think an actor, you should let the magic happen. I want you to see, like, yes, this is the character, this is the name, this traits, blah blah blah, accents, whatever the things that they're like a must. But I look for an actor to bring their interpretation of that character to me. And maybe I'm like, you know what, shit, that's like way off. But there's something that you have to, and I understand, like, there's obviously productions that are like, we need to go fast, we need to find the people, and you don't take the time. Maybe not for roles for extras and things like that. You can be a little more, think as much in detail. But I think when it comes to your leads, your characters, like, you have to, every character has to bring something. And so my process is, like, I call it like finding the seed. What's that little element? That you come in, you have your tape, and I'm like, it's not there. It's not what I envision, but there's something about you that I know I can take, and I can grow the character around that. And it can be like an expression, or it can be, something like a movement, or again, something I'm like, oh my God, I love this. I love this, and you incorporate it into the character. I don't think, when people are, you box yourself and, like, this is my character and I need to find this person. That's very fucking hard, or like for that person to become that. And I'm not saying that, you have to stray away and like change your characters based on that, but it goes down to flexibility. So I tell actors, and it goes back to yourself as, being authentic and taking, you obviously don't, a lot of times I'm sure you don't have the time to work on the character, right? It's like, all right, there's an audition tomorrow or 2 days or whatever, and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta like this. But think about it like that perspective, like, it's not, don't, I would say, an actor, don't try to satisfy just the vision of the director. try to satisfy the vision of the character, and like, and if you bring something that elevates that character, if the director, kind of like sees that and they're like, and then they're open to that, you're like, oh shit. Because like, I think at the end of the day, like, you're also proving yourself. You're proving something that you get cast for that role. And then it's like, hey, I know that, hey, Misa, like, what do you think could be like what would she do? What with this, like, so, so it's, I think it's very important for actors to take that, to take do their take,
Yes, yes.
and they might not be it. I've seen people who just like, I watch it, I'm like, no, this is not, I'm not getting anything out of it. And there's other people that I'm like, shit, I like to see where it goes. And it's not easy. It's not
Mm,
easy
mm.
because, you get a tape and the tapes are so shitty, in the sense that you're not wearing the outfit. You're not wearing, like, maybe my character has like shaved head, and you don't have that look, and how you got to vision that, and envision like that character. And a lot of people, I would say directors probably do, but most cases, but some people, they're like, oh, I don't know, is this person the right person? I don't really see the character there. And you have to find the seed. You have to find the little thing that you can work with, and you're like, this is what I need to grow. This is where I have to pull from.
I
So I
love
would say
it. I
that's
love
kind
it.
of how it goes for me.
That's really beautiful that you say the seed because for me, it makes me think of what we were saying before about like the authenticity, right? Like the seed is you, right? The seed is you. You're your seed. You spread out roots, you grow, you learn, but it's you. And I think as actors, many times I think we make this mistake where we're like, okay, what do they want to see? Like, you want to like do something that they're gonna like, So you're like, oh, they want to see this. Okay, so I should do this because this is what I expect them that they want to see from this. But actually, and I once heard this as well in an interview, which was like, you're not here to get a job. You are here to move someone across that screen. All you're doing is you're just here to play a role, be authentic with your choices, make choices, and someone on the other side of this screen has to feel something. You're not here to like, oh God, I need to book this, I need to get this. But sometimes, as you say, we get a self tape and it's so last minute, and you're like, oh my God, I really want this, like, I really want this role. And so you start kind of, you forget some crucial elements that, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's bringing that element to it, and it's the idea of, some people walk in and you're just like, oh shit, like, this is not, you know, and there's so many. I think it's hard to, maybe it's hard to forget that, because maybe you go on so many auditions and you're not getting anything, and then you start
Yeah.
thinking, fuck, like, what am I doing? Do I need to change anything? And a lot of times, it, obviously, it's not saying keep doing, you have to evaluate those choices, or how you're coming in. Like, I think there's a lot of, acting workshops that probably kind of go into that. How do you walk into the room? Like, what is that process? The 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 looking for directors, looking for that. I would say, like, one piece of advice, for example, like, it's funny, and if you do this, don't get offended, but you go to like an event or something, and as soon as, like, oh, he's director, you have actors swarming, like, oh, hi, blah 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 blah. And I get it, it's like you're trying to get the role, like, hey, I'm here, here's my
Yeah,
QR
yeah,
code, here's, like, ooh, like, my MDV, all this shit. And that's wonderful. That's yeah, you got to brand yourself and things
yeah.
like that. But I always tell people, like, again, this is just my personal opinion. Like, some people might love the, oh yeah, everyone's coming to me. Like, I want to get to know, I want a real conversation with a human being, like, come and say hi to me. Like, I don't mind people coming up to me if we're in an event, and be like, but it's not, don't try to sell to me,
Mm,
try to,
mm.
like, connect with me as a human being, and then I'll be more open to be like, yo, so what are you working on, like,
Yeah,
because it's, and I think it's like any job, you don't want to work with people, you want to work with people that you have a good time with, that there's always this analogy of saying, like, you can have, like, the best let's just say like I don't know, like director of photography, like the best director of photography in the world, like oh, like beautiful images and this and that, and that person's a piece of shit. And then you have another director of photography that's like pretty good, not like recognized or whatever, but you have such a great relationship, or like they're just like super chill or whatever. And
Yeah.
then when you go on set, like that's, that energy is going to be there. You don't want that. So you want to connect with people before that. You're not just like, there is a selling aspect. I get that. Don't, it's not, everyone's going to connect, not everyone's going to vibe with everyone. But when it just feels like boom, like ad, here I am, boom, here's my. It sometimes it just gets so overdone,
Yeah.
and connect with someone, like hey, let's love to take me out to a coffee, and you want to get my thoughts about it, and then you just like hey, by the way, I'm doing this.
Yeah, you're so right. It's funny. I was recently as well, like listening to a director say, I'm human. I'm a person. So like when you come up to me, ask me how I am. Like be like, hi, like treat me as a normal person. Because it's like you get like loads of actors just coming in, like handing in your whatever, like see these Instagrams, IMDb and stuff, and it's just overwhelming. It's not human. And also the person isn't authentic with you, right? Because if you're just selling yourself, you're not being yourself, and people buy people. So I think this is a very beautiful thing to say as well for any also actors watching this, to just like be human. This is also another human that you're talking to, who does amazing work, like, but still a human.
Yeah, yeah, and you never know. Like we're not. I mean, some people are, but like some directors are like churning out work, and some directors don't have the next work. They don't know yet, so you're building that. Like I literally have an Excel sheet of actors that I've met in the same way. You're also you're part of that list, but I literally make a, hey, there's a picture, name, where they're from, IMDb, real, whatever, and I have that, and sometimes there's a project. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Let me look at my contacts or the people that I met, and like, oh, you know what? Fuck, because you forget about people sometimes too. But like, it's a nice way. But if you're already connected with that person, it's it's a nice way to just like kind of keep that in mind, or staying there, staying relevant in that sense. So.
Yeah.
So I think someone who's like more human, or someone who I'm like, oh man, yeah, like person, like yeah, she told me this cool story, like or I connected in some way, is gonna be more memorable than someone who gave me their headshot or their QR code or whatever. So
Yeah. Pick me. No, you're right. And this also makes me think of something that you were saying earlier, that, like, even though you might not be right for one specific role, it doesn't mean that if you do a good job, the director or the casting director is not going to remember you, Especially when you're being authentically, you're doing a good job. I mean, sometimes it's really out of an actor's hands, as you also just rightly said. Like recently, a friend of mine as well got optioned for something, and then they didn't take her because she looked too much like one of the other characters. So even that, they sometimes even look at that, like you need to have a good variety of different people, and who looks, family member, there's just so many different elements that come into play that I think as actors we sometimes don't realize, and we immediately just put the blame on us, when there's so many factors. But if you do a good job, people remember you. You see, you have an Excel spreadsheet of different actors. That's amazing. I hope every director has this. That's so cool.
no, you're right. You're right. There's so many elements. I think people usually say like, oh, I got like a bigger name came and they took my role, and that's unfortunately part of the business, and because it is a business. It's a puzzle. It's a giant puzzle, and we're all just kind of like moving this around. But like you said, sometimes it's like, oh, when you have that cast, you do look at it like from a bird's eye view, and like, okay, like what is this? Oh shit, like this doesn't really mix, or this person, we have a younger version of that, a flashback or something. It's like, oh, they're not really matching. So it is. There's a lot of elements in it, but it's not personal, with that. And I don't think actors should take that. It's a you're still growing. You're still kind of changing every performance, everything you do. It makes the next thing better. I always say
Sure,
that.
sure.
And well, let me ask you, like, how when it comes to the relationship with the director, what do you look for? What's the thing that
What I look for is a word that I actually also mentioned earlier when I gave the example of Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker and Todd Phillips. It's co-creation. Like obviously I respect directors so much and I completely understand that they have a specific idea and they want that idea. And as an actor, I'm here to, as well fulfill that and do it at the best that I can, being authentic as I can. But what I love to see on sets, and I've seen it before as well, is when all of a sudden, you have a scene and you're doing the scene, and then all of a sudden an actor does something, and the director's like, I love that. Wait, do that again? That fits so well because it's something natural that the actor does, So it feels authentic, it works for the role. So I think, yeah, just this element of co-creation, like working together, creating something magical that also fits in line with the storyline, of course. Imagine now we're going to change everything. um, yeah, I would say this.
what's the worst advice you've gotten from a director maybe or from I mean in general, I guess, like in the industry that
Lose weight. No, um, that was mostly from like different agents in the past. Like, sorry, you're overweight to be an actress, so you need to lose like 10 kilos. And I was like, I was super young, I was 18. I haven't told this to many people, but I actually tried acting just after I finished university for a year. I told my parents, please let me try it for 1 year after I finish uni, and it went really bad. Not in. I think I was a bit too young. I moved to London, and I had really really sad experiences actually of people who took a bit advantage. And I'm not going to get into too much detail now because it's quite intense things that unfortunately I think a lot of actresses at a very young age have lived through. But one of them is, for example, your body. That was a really bad advice that I got. Another bad advice that I got also from mostly like whether it's agents or things is like, you have to please, you say yes to everything, things like this. But I think from a director, what I haven't appreciated, because I know that everyone has different perspectives, but sometimes when I've been told to play an emotion, and like on the spot and hurry up, we don't have time, like do this now, and I think it puts an actor at a bad position because we're here to be real, and when you tell me to play an emotion, I can't just fake it. Like I need to imagine the circumstance. Why am I doing this emotion? Why am I angry right now? What is causing me to be angry? Is it the actor? Is it the circumstances? Is it my internal dialogue? And so I need a bit of time to tap into that to make it as authentic as possible. I mean, I can quickly shout and be mean, but it's not with depth, and so that I haven't really appreciated in the past. But I also understand like time is ticking sometimes. You need something quick, it's a quick scene, I don't know. So not here to judge, but from my personal experience, these are the things that I haven't appreciated too much. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's true, the sometimes like it's like, oh, the daylights, we have this amount of shots, we need to move fast. And I think, yeah, sometimes you don't take the time, or you was like, I just want to see Mad, like the example you
Yeah.
just used, right? And instead of like, oh shit, I gotta give her like why and this, it's, I don't know. I think with actors, you can be honest, and they'll probably be like, hey, look, we have 30 minutes to shoot this thing, like, and we're gonna go this area, or we need to like, like, can you make this? Can you figure it out? Like also maybe not structuring you so much, um, where it feels like I don't know, like it has to be like this way instead of being like, hey, these are your parameters, like these are your limits, like can you make
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
work, and maybe it's like
Yeah.
moving around the
Yeah.
room a different way or something that gives you a little more freedom to
Yes, I like that. Like communicating well, like making the actor understand. Like,
you're gonna get so much pressure from the producers, from your line producers, like, hey, we need to fucking go, we need next scene. And and sometimes you have to push a little bit, or try, or evaluate, see those things, like um what are the things I talked a lot about this in the last interview I did for this. We talked about a lot about preparation, and how prepared, the more prepared you are when you get there, the more flexibility you have, like you're running late on this one, but hey, we already did this is planned, like we can things are always going to happen. Shit always happens. It's I'll give you one random example. Like the last film I made, we rented a car, and that was like for like our just to go get stuff for a runner and things like that. And we parked it in a disabled parking spot. Literally, like the painting on you couldn't see it. Like it was so faded. And by the end of the day, we had to like drive some people to train station, things like that, and the car was gone. And I remember, yeah, actually, like mid set, they're like, "Hey, by the way, the car's gone." I'm like, "Fuck," and like, it's and you're and that's in your mind, and you're like you still have like maybe 2 more hours of like shooting, and you're just like, shit. And we didn't have like a big crew, so I sort of had to take care of that. So it's kind of you have to like basically your brain like okay like I need to put this problem here and like we need to focus on this performance and that's it's not always hard but it's that thing but you have your limits and like there's always constraints that are going to rush in the ideal world like yeah we're gonna shoot this tomorrow again we have like $100 million to whatever but it's that and the experiences like just with that.
I mean, I love what you said about preparation. I think preparation is number one in whatever that you do. And it's so beautiful that you talked about this too much, so we won't dwell in it too much. But, I was even thinking about now, like the preparation of having your phone charged when you do something. Like, but like, it's all these little things. And it's always nice to come as prepared as you can, but also be prepared for the unexpected, like leave that gap that like, as an actor, for example, you're going to a casting. The amount of times that I speak to actors who are like, "Oh my God, I'm really late. Like the train didn't come." I'm like, think about the fact that that could happen. Like of course, sometimes you really can't prevent some things. Like really, like if they cancel like 10 trains that day, then I'm sorry, like it's an issue. But like always be prepared because then you can be calm and calmer. Like a big thing that I've been working now actually is my nervous system. Which I think is really important for anyone in the creative industry to just like have a calm nervous system with whatever you do. And even just having that, like that's also preparation, having a bit of a more like calm nervous system so you can have fun when you're actually doing things and you can deal with situations in a more calm way, I think also makes a big difference. Like I can't even imagine what you did for this car though, honestly, Alex. Like if they tell me the car's gone, I'd be like, okay, okay.
But like it's funny because that was like the first day. It was a 2 day shoot. It was a short, and it's like you're saying you have to find like that first day was a shit show, and there were so many things going on, and I was lacking that leadership that I was trying to find, and I was like oh like obviously I was trying to people to I had this thing where I was like, I want everyone to be happy on set and blah blah blah, and then you have to realize that everyone's there to fulfill that vision that you created. And I remember that night, I think I got home like 1 in the morning, and we were supposed to shoot again, like the second day, 6 in the morning next day. And I remember having this like moment where it's like I need to fucking align, and I need to okay, we have this day, like this happened, like take a look back, what went wrong with this and that. But you need to bring all that down and say, what can I do better? What are the things what have we learned from today? And the next day was that. I think I came with a little more like, determination. And I was like, okay, like I know like this, I know this has been growing, like we have this relationship. And I was more like, direct in the sense of like, oh, we're thinking about this, like, and it doesn't align. Like, no, we don't need that. It's fine. Let's go. Boom, boom, boom. And you need that. And I think for a long time, I thought like being like that direct was like, I don't want to be, I want to be conscious of everyone and give them the space and things like that. But sometimes like, you have to be kind. You have to be kind, but you still have to captain the ship, you gotta get there. So it's a lot of those things, it's a lot of those elements, and taking those deeper choices and preparation and even from you were saying like from an acting perspective, I thought it was funny. I saw this story the other day, and it was they were talking about the film Argo with Ben Affleck, and for those, well, there's basically like this character that kind of like tortures him at one point, and they were telling that the casting director was saying that she found this guy, and this guy was like amazing. She's like, yeah, he should be like he's kind of like the bad guy in the film. and I can't remember why, but like basically they didn't, he became an extra. And then like 2 days later or whatever, they're like, "Oh, did you hear that?" The casting director, they told her, "Did you hear that Ben upgraded one of the extras?" And she was like, "Who was it?" And it was this guy. And he was saying, Ben Affleck saying like, "Oh yeah, like I just saw him," and I was just like, "Holy shit!" Like his expression, his this and that. And then Ben Affleck during an interview, they're asking him, obviously they would like, he's like, "Hey, can you do this role?" And Ben Affleck asked the actor, I can't remember the actor's name right now, but he's like, "Shit, man, how did you learn the lines so quickly?" And he goes like, "I actually prepared them last night just in case that like you like needed me." And he went prepared, and obviously that's like a very special case, but you never know when something
Yeah,
might pop up. You never know, like you're gonna get elevator with someone and you have like 30 seconds and you're like, shit, like I need to, you know, pitch something or talk to someone or the idea, so like, preparation and knowing your craft and your worth is very important with all these elements that come to play.
for sure. And it's also so magical, no? Like to think that, like every day is just this blank, raw canvas where so many things can happen. I remember once reading that a description of luck, that luck is when opportunity meets preparation, And for me, it's really accurate. Like, I think you can like you can really prepare something for your life and you can really study what you love and really put your effort into it, and then when that opportunity comes you're going to be ready because you've been preparing for so long, and that's luck. That's when, as you said, like you're in the elevator and all of a sudden you bump into somebody who's like, wait, you like you look like, are you someone that is an actor because you look pretty good for this type that I have? You just never know. And I think that's such a magical thing of life, is that you just never know what can happen and when it can happen. They say, what do they say about like overnight success, that it takes like 20 years? you know like, yeah. Mm.
But even the 20 years, I think success in whatever form it comes, like it's success is not the same for everyone, or like what brings
True.
them joy is also,
Mm.
we need to think of that. But I think it's also like it comes down to like your inner. We always, when we have coffee, talk about energy of the universe and we get all spiritual and things. But like I think it's the universe provides when you open those doors, when you allow that opportunities come, like it's, I think we block ourselves, in anything in life, and you're just like, oh, I'm not going to get that or this. And it's, you're not, once you really let go of those things, of those fears or those things holding you back at a certain point, it's just like, it's just funny how things just start
Mm.
aligning and happening, and you're like, where, what, like when did this happen? And because you've made choices that have allowed you to be in the space that you need to be. I heard someone, I think it's a casting director, who once said, because everyone's like, oh, like, I need to get in the room, I need to like this and that.
Mm.
And she said, I think it was something like, there's people in the room already that are talking about you. You're just not in that room yet, but you're being talked about in that room. And at one
Yeah.
point you will be in that room, but you just have to keep doing the things that kind of aligns with that. And things will align if you allow them to be. And I think it comes really down to what you were saying earlier about being your truest version, your authentic version
Yeah.
of self, like.
I also love what you said about what is success, right? Like we have this idea of what success means, but success is different for everyone. And also maybe sometimes success is different for us. You hear interviews of like the famous known actors who say that they wanted when they were young to get famous, and then when they're there, they're just like, actually, can you take this away? Like sometimes we have this idea of what we want and what success is, but that's why I think it's really important to remember the why sometimes. Like, why are we in this industry? Why do we do what we do? Because maybe we don't need to like win something crazy big far away, like maybe even just like winning something from a festival, or getting a recognition from your work, or working with incredible actors in the moment, like that's a success, right? It doesn't have to be something always like in a grandiose perspective of like being known or whatever. It can really be also in the small things that we do that give us such happiness, because all we really have is now. Like this is also such a moment of happiness, to talk about these things. And this is also a success. We get to be here talking about what we love, you know.
No, you're right. No, it's that. It's like what, yeah, the things that bring you joy, and yeah, every person's like different in that sense, but I think it comes down to like finding, for me at least, it's finding peace in what you do. I creating, having that space where to find your voice, to have your time to create, just not rushing like, oh, what's the next thing, and you want to keep doing. And I'm very like I'm very much that mindset where like if I want to do something, I'll probably end up doing it, building it or things like that. So yeah, so just to end this wonderful conversation, I want to do something a little more personal. There's ups and downs, there's good and bad. Do you still love it?
I still adore it, honestly. Like and even recently, even more, like as time goes on, um, the older I get, the more I bring fun back into it, because, like, of course, when you're young, you don't have all your fears and worries, right? Like what you said earlier about the importance of the mind, right? And the things that the mind plays. But recently, I've started, because I'm becoming more conscious with myself and what I want in this life and how I want to live my everyday. Now, Alex, every time I get a self tape, I'm like, yes, let's go. Like a moment to have fun. And I just forget about the rest. Like I forget about what they want to see, how it's going to go, whether I'm going to get picked, whether I'm not. I just bring back the joy. I bring back the fun. So now, like, I'm super excited for all the amazing things that are to come, the amazing projects that are also in the works, all the seeds that have been planted, bringing my authenticity. And yeah, if I can also leave with anything and any advice, it's really like, don't forget to have fun. Like we're here trying to validate our existence and wanting others to, validate us and what we do. And like, just work from your heart, have fun in what you do, connect with fantastic people, co-create, yeah, it's just the.
Well, Misa, thank you so much for doing this, for joining me in this lovely conversation. And, again, hope everyone who watches can take something from it, maybe get inspired. I'm gonna leave all of Misa's social and all that stuff. You can follow her, join her journey, and yeah, thank you for joining on this call.